I have tons of different Warhammer armies already. I have 12 different armies for Warhammer the Old World, and about a dozen other warbands for Mordheim and Necromunda. I have a force of Imperial Guard, a decent amount of Eldar, some Tyranids, and no fewer than 5 different armies of Space Marines in various levels of preparedness. Objectively speaking, the last thing I need is another Warhammer army. But I've started one anyways. And I didn't even mean to. And it's not my fault. It happened in the background, bit by bit over the years, despite my feeble attempts to not get distracted with new projects. I am a victim of Games Workshop's clever and insidious strategy to get me to start a new army. And today, I'm going to tell you all about it. In recent years, it's no secret that Games Workshop has changed their strategy to revolve around the sale of large boxes, with a relatively high price point and a decent variety of models. These boxes seem to be the preferred method for releasing new miniatures. They bundle a new set with a bunch of old miniatures, then make it available for a limited time. More often than not, these boxes feature 2 factions, Chaos and Eldar, or Recruit and Imperial Guard, whatever it is. The conventional wisdom is that you should find a friend and split this box with them, and then you each have a good foothold to a new collection. Or, failing that, you can sell the other half to a stranger on Facebook Marketplace or eBay, or you can find someone in your local game community and offer it to them. But the reality is, this part is often delayed or forgotten or abandoned, and we end up finding ourselves with a collection of sprues for armies that we never really meant to collect. This is Games Workshop's insidious trick. By bundling 2 armies together in one box, they force you to either divest yourself of the minis yourself, thus doing their sales work for them, or accept the foothold that they've gained in your collection with the start of a new army. Now in my case today, I'm talking about the Necrons. In 2019, Games Workshop released the 9th edition of Warhammer 40k, and with it the launch box for Indomitus. Whenever Games Workshop does a new edition of a game, they release these starter sets, and they're typically a great value of all new miniatures packaged with everything you need to play. Rulebook, dice, cards, etc. The minis in these starter sets are also designed to be easier to assemble than normal. They're engineered specifically to be push fit, which is to say they don't even technically require glue if you don't feel like using glue for some reason, but you probably always should. For someone interested in Warhammer as the new edition turns over, it makes a lot of sense to buy one of these starter sets, which I did, and at the time I was only really interested in the Space Marine half of it for my Blood Angels collection. And so the Necron half of Indomitus was buried for years, sleeping dormant, lying in wait, until now. I recently listened to the audiobook The Infinite and the Divine, which features an entertaining rivalry between 2 Necron characters, Trazyn the Infinite and Orichan the Diviner. It's one of the best Warhammer books I've listened to, and I had an absolute blast listening to it. But it had the unintended side effect of giving me a bit of Necron fever. And of course, my mind turned to the pile of Necron miniatures that I had in my closet, unloved, barely even thought about for years, just sitting there. Well, it didn't take much for me to pull them out and start work on what would be my newest army. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, the last thing that I need, objectively speaking, is a new Warhammer army. So as I was tinkering away with these Necrons, I was having a good time, but I also had this sort of nagging feeling of guilt that I shouldn't invest too much time into this. After all, it's not my primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. It's not a priority. So what I did was make up a method to work on this army to get the best results and have the most fun with it with the lowest effort and time investment possible. And I'm going to show you that method today. I've got a lot of cool tricks to share with you in this video, and if you like learning new stuff, check out today's sponsor, Skillshare. I've been trying to learn 3D modeling for a while now, and I find sometimes it's hard to know where to begin when learning a new skill. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. I'm always trying to improve my filmmaking and editing skills, my illustration skills, and my 3D modeling abilities. Recently, I took a class called Building an Isometric Sci-Fi World in Blender 3D, a complete beginner's guide, and it was clear, easy to follow, well-structured, and full of useful information. Skillshare's recently added 3 new class topics as well as smarter class categories and the ability to find classes by software and material. As the fall rolls around, the human body craves learning, so join Skillshare and have a gander at all the cool and engaging classes you can take and things you can learn. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so get started today. Thanks Skillshare for sponsoring this video. The contents of the indomitus box were of course the foundation of this project. The new Necron warrior models are quite simple to assemble. As I mentioned before, they're simplified push-fit models. Now here's the first tip I have for you guys to save time while assembling models. If you're assembling something like infantry, start by clipping out all the pieces for one mini at a time, then clean up the gates and mold lines and assemble that mini. If you cut any fewer pieces, you waste time going back and forth between tools with each step. If you cut out more than one mini at a time, you can risk mixing up the pieces from different models and waste time that way. Try it this way, and you'll notice the efficiency. Once I have my minis assembled, I like to put them on a bit of scrap card with some sticky tack on the bottom of their bases. Now obviously choosing a color scheme is hugely important for any army. You can always paint your army any color you like. They're your little guys after all. But there are usually a bunch of different official color schemes to choose from as well. For Necrons, these are denoted by different Necron dynasties. When Games Workshop released the Necrons with Indomitus, they put particular emphasis on the Saracen dynasty, which has this brownish copper hue as the choice for the studio army. But I'm an old head. I like the old ways, and nothing says Necron to me like the gleaming silver of the Sotek dynasty. It's a look obviously heavily inspired by the Terminator. These are the Necrons that I grew up with, the metal skeletons walking implacably forward, killing everything in their path. And that's just how I like it. Coincidentally enough, this is one of the easiest color schemes to paint as well, and this leads me to my next time-saving army building tip: choose a color scheme that has a key color that you can apply quickly and easily all at once. By all at once, you can use a big paintbrush, a rattle can, or in my case, an airbrush, and simply cover the whole mini in your base color. I've painted my guys silver to start, the whole model. It literally takes seconds to paint each model. Now even if you have no spare time at all to paint your minis, simply base coating them already makes them look like 65% better than if they were just bare plastic. Seriously, ask yourself, would you rather play against all gray Necrons or all silver Necrons? Literally minutes into our painting project, we've achieved what I call painting level 1. They're still technically unpainted, but just the base coat is 65% better than bare plastic. Hell yeah. From there, I like to glue sand to my minis' bases. Now you could do this beforehand and then prime over them, and that's a solid plan, but any order is fine. You're going to have to paint them by hand anyways, and you can be pretty sloppy with it, so it goes fast. I paint mine black, then come back with some watered down rust effects paint from the army painter. The rust soaks into the recesses and will dry with a cool, dusty look without having to go through the fuss and mess of pigment powders. This orange tone contrasts beautifully with the silver as well. Having a contrasting base goes a long way to making the army look finished and presentable with minimal effort. This is level 2, base coat and a base. I don't think it's controversial to say that this already looks 75% better than an unpainted mini. And we could have painted this with a potato so far. Just look at the brush that I used to apply this rust wash. I haven't seen a brush used so roughly since Jackson Pollock, and the CIA didn't even need to get involved in this one. Next, we're going to add a little more refinement. I start with an all-over wash of dark tone, which will give the silver some tonal variations and add some darkness to the recesses, adding contrast and realism. From there, it's time to apply the key accent color. And in this case, that key accent color is the iconic glowing green that Necrons are known for. It always helps to have art to inspire you, and this is my favorite piece of Necron art. The eerie green just works so well with the shining silver to give these guys that iconic Necron look. No wonder these guys were so effective at defeating Stannis on the Black Wall. Mathis, get down! So to make this glowing green, I start by applying some matte white paint, thinned down so that it flows nicely into the recesses. Getting that light pigment into the deepest cracks is going to make this quick glow effect really sing. With the white dry, I apply some Data System Glow, which is a neon green paint from the Army Painter specifically designed for glow effects. Something interesting about neon paints is that they appear brighter than white to the naked eye. The reason for this is because they bend light from outside of the visible spectrum into the visible, making them appear unnaturally bright. This is why a yellow highlighter somehow looks brighter on a page than the white paper around it. I think that's really cool. Anyways, the neon green is going to sink in really nicely and look awesome. As an added step, I like to add a bit of electric line paint to the center. This gives the glow a bit of yellow to it and makes up for the poor opacity of my whitewash earlier. I think it looks great. This is level 3, base coat and primary accent color. This is where things start to really sing. These now look like fully painted models. You may not win any awards, but it looks 90% better than an unpainted model. and you can put these down on any tabletop with a reasonable amount of pride. If you're wondering where these percentages are coming from, I pulled them straight out of my astral portal back to the tomb world. Next, we're going to apply a secondary accent color, in this case just boring old black. I paint the guns with this, framing the coils of the Gauss weapons nicely, and take the opportunity to touch up the base rims too if they need it. This is level 4, 3 colors and a base. You get full points in any official tournament for painted models, and they look great. Here's where my infantry models are going to stay for now, but that's by no means where you need to stop. If you want to come back later and add some gold details, or highlight the black on the weapons, or pick out some edges of the metal color with a bright silver, you can do that whenever you want. Now, this method is incredibly fast and easy for painting up your rank and file troops and getting any new army on the table quickly. But the same principles set you up nicely for success on your elite models, larger models, and characters as well. For example, on these flayed ones, they feature large areas of skin draping from them, which covers about a third of each model. This makes the skin color my primary accent color, and since these guys are a little bit special, I lavish a bit more attention on that particular detail to make them pop. I start by applying a base coat of moonstone skin, then highlighting up to a paler tone called ruby skin. When painting skin, having a really saturated midtone like moonstone skin makes it really look fleshy and realistic. In the books, these guys are said to have red eyes, but I like to keep them a glowing green to tie them in with the rest of my army. You could cover these guys with gore too if that's your thing, going all Jackson Pollock with splatter effects, and you don't even have to get the CIA involved. For your character models, the introduction of another accent color can go a long way too to making them stand out. Take for example Orca and the Diviner here. The official model is a riot of colors that doesn't really do it for me, so I decided to paint his little side flaps here and the top of his staff in gold. These side flaps are used to absorb energy from what I recall, which means that if you think about it, he's kind of like a big flower guy. In any event, I'm going to give this guy a fairly quick paint job as well, but with my army's high impact color scheme and the addition of that royal gold, he really looks quite special. On large models, these techniques work just as well, like on this Canoptic spider, which I bought from somebody for cheap off Facebook Marketplace. In this case though, I decided to paint a large portion of the body black, and since it's so visually prominent, I spent a bit of extra time building up some nice edge highlights on the black bit. Without having to edge highlight the whole model, I can give the look of a fairly refined paint job without too much additional effort. In that same spirit, on these Scorpec destroyers, the models are visually dominated by the big green hyperphase weapons that they carry. This means it's worthwhile to spend a bit of time building these up to a decent standard, as the visual impact of that weapon alone will elevate the simple paint job on the rest of the model hugely. I do this by building up a gradient of colors, using the box art for reference. When painting something like this, I think many people often get caught up in the trap of worrying about the smoothness of the blends, when what really controls the visual impact is the correct ratio of dark and light. Once you nail those proportions, a cheeky edge highlight will make the whole weapon look quite decent, and the lack of perfectly smooth blends doesn't really detract from the effect at all. So, despite being baited into starting an army I never intended to by the wiles of Games Workshop, with these simple techniques and approach, I've been able to build myself what I consider to be a quite lovely little Necron army. And I did it quite quickly, and had a really great time doing it as well. From here on out, I can add to this army as I like, adding a vehicle here or there, or lavishing as much attention as I like on special characters, all with the comfort of knowing that the backbone of the army is already painted decently well and ready to play. I find it immensely gratifying to have another fully painted army, and I have plans to get these guys on the table soon. I might even build a cheeky tomb world, I don't know. But before that, I have an update on my Titan project coming for you guys. I think a lot of us have more models than we think we can ever get to in our collections, and sometimes that makes me feel a little bit anxious. So there's something extremely comforting to me about getting a huge chunk of my backlog ready to play with and out on the table. And I highly recommend that you guys try it too. Well guys, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to support the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And if you guys want to get 5% off on all Army Painter products, I'll put a link down in the description and you guys can use my promo code to get that discount. The Army Painter paints are fantastic and it's a great way to support what they've been doing, which is supporting me. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.